Welcome to the Wildlife Wire. I'm Mark Searles,
And I'm Samantha Miller.
and this is your source for wildlife news and the people that make it.
What are we figuring out, Mark?
The flow.
Well, I think our flow today is that we are doing something very special over the next 2 weeks, which is we are interviewing each other.
Ooh.
I know. It's going to be a lot of fun. I love chatting with you. I think you're a wealth of information, and I think our listeners really don't get to hear from us directly too much. We often have guests and then we comment on the news, but we do have specific subject matter expertise that we can bring to the show. So
We
I
know
thought
things. Just don't ask me where I was on January 6th.
I will never I'll never ask. I think we know some things about some things, and we both are working on a couple priorities over the next year, and we both just finished up some research and reporting on these priorities. And one thing that you are working on in your role at Project Coyote is, drumroll, rodenticides. And,
Everyone loves rodenticides,
you know,
but
people should
no,
hate rodenticides,
that's where
Mark.
we're going to get them from.
We're going to today we are taking you from, oh, maybe I should use rat poison to maybe I shouldn't. There's other options. And Mark Searles, my co-host, is very involved in rodenticide reform. Rodenticides do all sorts of terrible things, which Mark can talk about. But first, Mark, I want to know, how thrilled are you to be a guest on your own show?
I've waited a long time for this moment, and I am honored to be a guest here. I wish that co-host was here to really ask me those tough questions about
Hmm.
the physical size of a rodenticide uh, feeding station, and
Yeah.
and and all of his in-depth questions. Uh,
You want to ask yourself questions, is what you're telling me?
yeah, what now? They're in a box. Tell me how big this box is.
What's in the box, Mark? What's in the box?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
poison.
it is poison. Yeah, I'm happy to share my knowledge of this subject with our listeners, and hopefully, um, if there are folks that listen that uh, use these poisons, that maybe they'll think twice and start to seek some alternatives.
Okay, well, I've got some hard-hitting questions for you. And for our listeners, just so they know our background a little bit, because we don't really talk about ourselves much. You and I, we met many a moon ago, both working on the Prop 127 campaign in Colorado, where we were attempting and failing to
Well,
prohibit.
we weren't failing the whole time. We failed, but there was
We did,
lots of winning along the way.
we did fail, but we did find each other. And that was the campaign to prohibit the recreational hunting of mountain lions, bobcats, and lynx, and trapping for bobcats and lynx. You can't trap lynx right now, but we know how the Endangered Species Act works on this show, where as soon as the animals are delisted, they are hunted. And state agencies love to kill a recently downlisted endangered species. So that's why lynx were included. You ran volunteers. You did an excellent job on that. I ran the campaign. I failed on that. So
You, when allowed, you ran a very wonderful campaign.
well, thank you. Well, we're not here to talk about that today. We are here to talk about what we are doing now. And now you work for Project Coyote, and you are the state director for Wyoming and Colorado, correct?
For Colorado, easing into Wyoming and Montana.
Right, where all the killing happens. It's good to start somewhere where we can do a thing, right?
Right? Yeah.
Well, I have been really, really impressed by what you've been able to accomplish in this role. And one of those things is really elevating rodenticides to decision makers. And for folks listening, can you tell us which rodenticides are we talking about? Are we talking about like, oh, we shouldn't put any poisons out for rats or mice or voles that we have around our house? Are there specific rodenticides and why are they bad?
Yeah. Yeah. I will answer that question. I would like to first go
You're pivoting.
into
You're pivoting on me already, Mark?
I'm giving some background here.
Okay, go ahead.
So why this has been a passion project of mine for a few years now. And it all started back uh, taking photos of coyotes when I was creating my book, Coyote Conversations. And and you know, I it was really sad because I would find a coyote with signs of mange. So, a hairless tail, or, in the worst scenarios, uh, completely hairless. And
Is that where the term mangy coyote comes from? When people say, oh, that mangy varmint, they actually have mange, a disease.
yep, it is a parasitic mite that carries sarcoptic mange. That's the type of mange that affects coyotes. There are other types of mange as well. But I was never able to use those photos, and I kind of just put those aside. And then the advocacy side started to bloom, and I linked up with Deanna Meyer from Prairie Protection Colorado, and we started discussing how rodenticides impact um, coyotes, foxes, bobcats, mountain lions, and how uh, those rodenticides will make an animal more vulnerable to mange and the severity of mange. And so that's where this whole crusade started. Uh, in that, I have learned a wealth of knowledge around all things rat poisons. And that, yes, as far as are all poisons created equally? No. Uh, are all poisons bad? I mean, they're called poisons for a reason. I don't think anyone should be using poisons as just a easy way to rid your house or your business of mice or rats. There are other ways, and we can get into that later. Uh, but they're not all created equally, and so we have our anticoagulants, and they're broken down into two categories. First generation anticoagulants, warfarin is the most well known in that category, and those were over the years starting to be less effective on rodents, and so uh, some
So
chemists
were the rodents becoming immune? How is this
basically, yeah,
happening? Were they developing special
they were
powers?
developing kind of like a tolerance to them, and it
Okay.
wasn't killing them. And so, uh, smart people doing things for not smart reasons created second generation anticoagulants. And these are really powerful, where they can deliver a fatal dose in one feeding from one of these bait stations. The non-anticoagulant rodenticide that is also incredibly harmful is bromethalin. And so while anticoagulants can be treated, a vitamin K treatment can get an animal or a human back, which is also an animal, get back to health. Bromethalin there is no cure for, and they are just as dangerous to people, pets, and wildlife as the anticoagulant rodenticides.
And bromethalin acts differently, right? Like, so the anticoagulants impact your blood and bromelain impacts your brain. How do the two work?
Yeah. So your anticoagulants are going to make it where blood blood clotting doesn't occur, right? And so um, animals will bleed out internally, or will have a difficult time if they were wounded, and they wouldn't be able to, just as the name implies, coagulate the blood. The bromethalin, like you said, attacks the brain and nervous system, and has a completely different impact on those that are affected by it.
And you use a really fancy word when you talk about what these poisons do to other species. You said they bioaccumulate.
Hmm.
What does this fancy word mean, and how do these poisons work their way from the mouse in my backyard to the fox in the wild?
Yeah, so they can rarely they can be a direct poisoning in wildlife. So the coyote, fox, bobcat, whoever it may be, would eat the poison from the bait station or around the bait station. The other side, which is more prevalent, is when the rodent feeds on any of these poisons, but the anticoagulants, they don't. I think there's a big misconception sometimes that people think those bait stations are traps where the rodent goes in there and dies. Not the case. They feed at these stations and then wander off, often, outside in a parking lot or in a field, and then die. Or, bad news for a business or homeowner, they may die in a wall. And so that's like a whole other issue that, you're going to have dealing with deteriorating smelling animals in your building. So what happens when they die out in the parking lot in the field is it's a dead mouse that a coyote or fox, birds of prey also, will happily eat that animal. It takes no hunting effort, and they will scavenge. And then that poisoned animal, once it's consumed, the poison can build up in their livers and then actually throughout all of their tissues in their bodies. And so the bioaccumulation means that poison doesn't leave the animal that consumed the dead rodent, and so it builds and builds and builds, kind of like the how there are warnings: don't eat X amount of this fish this many times in a month because of mercury, because that mercury is building up. Same kind of scenario here, and so that bioaccumulation can have different impacts on different animals, whether that's uh, immune system suppression or infertility issues. Sometimes happens in raptors, and then it can cause kind of in raptors. It can also cause like the inability to fly in a consistent manner, and there have been very well known animal or birds that, and specifically in New York, that have escaped zoos or been in the area, and they've got names and all of that, and then have flown in front of a car because the rodenticides were affecting their ability of flight, and they perish that way. Most often with coyotes, it would be that immune system suppression, and so that's where a case of mange that would a healthy animal would normally be able to fight off that parasite, and it wouldn't have a lethal effect on them. not the case when you have a whole bunch of rodenticides built up in your body, and they can't fight it off, and so they'll often suffer uh, lethally from that bioaccumulation.
Yeah, I bet that it would also impact our smaller canids like foxes who have die-offs from distemper. I bet that would also make them more susceptible to diseases like that.
Yep.
Uh, a famous mountain lion, part of his reason for perishing was rodenticides, right?
Yeah, the famous P-22 of the Hollywood Hills. He uh, he was found suffering from mange, and through blood tests they found uh, high levels of rodenticide exposure, and so luckily for him, he was able to be treated for that mange. Can't treat for the bioaccumulation, but most times that's not the case, right? Where a coyote or even another mountain lion isn't going to have a collar on, isn't going to be as well monitored as that beautiful animal was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be curious to see too what level of animals in conflict situations have some sort of secondary poisoning because we know as animals are weaker, there's issues with them, they're more likely to be involved in conflict. So I wonder if those studies exist. This is me hypothesizing out here, but I don't know if there are any studies like that yet.
Yeah, well, I can tell you anecdotally that with coyotes that a coyote that is suffering from mange. It's a really bad case. Most likely, rodenticides are playing a part in that. That animal loses his or her ability to hunt because of the constant itching and scratching, and so that animal is going to be out during the daytime more than especially in an urban suburban area, that than uh, a healthy counterpart would, right? They typically have learned to live around humans, and they've become more nocturnal instead of crepuscular, meaning more active during the morning and evening. And so, my experience is seeing coyotes during the day in a suburban setting. Most times they're suffering from mange, and lots of times from that, those animals have some sort of bioaccumulation of rodenticides in them.
That's fascinating how everything's interrelated too in different ways. Uh, Beyond our wild neighbors, I think that we're pretty concerned about rodenticides as parents. What's happening with kids? And also, we own pets. What does this mean for them?
Yeah, it's not good for wildlife, certainly not good for pets or people as well. And so, with people, looking at data from the uh, America's Poison Centers, which is the place that tracks all of this on a national level, we're looking at uh, on average anywhere from 4,500 to 5,000 cases reported to them. So that means there's obviously more cases of poisonings in humans per year. And then as we break down, and that's not all rat poisons. That's only our anticoagulants and bromethylin. And when we break down that data, the biggest contributor in human related poisons is second generation anticoagulants, with first generations having, I mean, we're talking the difference between of magnitude between 3,000 second generation poisonings in a year in the country versus 50 to 60 in your first generation. And then, so top most dangerous poison to people are your second generations. From there, bromethylene comes in at usually somewhere around 1,200 to 1,700 cases per year. And so, on average, 4,600 to 5,000 cases in a year. The worst part is, of those, uh, well over half are children 5 and under. And these are children that we both have small kids. When they're young, they're going to pick things up, and where do they go? They go in their mouth.
In their mouth, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so the poisons need to attract rodents, right? I liken the bait stations to drug dealers that don't care about repeat customers. They just want to sell their drugs. Same thing here. Is so you can't you can't get animals to come and eat your poison if there's not some sort of an attractant there, some sort of smell or taste, and so that is going to make children, if they try it out and they smell it and they want to eat it, and they might eat more than one, and then we've got a serious problem on our hand, and it can lead to death in the worst cases.
Yeah, and because of that smell, we're pushing poisons, we're bringing animals in with an attractant. I know that pets then are prone to go to those bait boxes as well. And cats, I think, are particularly prone to damages from bromethylene, correct?
Yeah, so cats, you do experience really bad symptoms. Bromethylene is it doesn't take much to harm or kill a cat from bromethylene. That being said, our dogs are still the number one pet that is having exposure to bromethylene or any other rodenticide. And when we're looking at cases of deaths in a year, like say just in Colorado, I mean, just like in gun violence, one is too many, right? And the same here applies, because this can be prevented by not using these poisons, and yet these unknowing uh, pets are going and feeding on these tasty treats, and then you know possibly suffering a fatal consequence from it. And a lot of times in our pets, it's direct ingestion compared to our wild canids and felids, and so having a bait box at your home is a pretty risky endeavor if if you don't have a pet, because we're talking about wildlife, and then if you have a pet, and then especially if you have a child pet. Now we got all three categories that are being affected, where choosing different methods like integrated pest management is a more long-term solution without those consequences.
You took the words out of my mouth. Integrated pest management. How do we use that to solve our rodent issues without having to turn to these poisons? It's the alternative available, right?
It, it's not the alternative, but it is the best long-term solution.
Okay.
So,
Tell me more.
my house was built in 1950, and it's settled. It has, different cracks and ways for a mouse to get in if they want to get in. What integrated pest management does is focus on exclusion. And so these guys come out, and instead of putting bait boxes out, they're going to find all those little tiny nooks and crannies that a mouse could possibly enter in your home, and fill those. So you're creating an impermeable wall versus having a poison outside of that wall. So even if you have the poison outside, that doesn't necessarily mean that a mouse is going to walk by that poison and and not feed, right? Like we know that uh, those bait boxes are only effective if the animal feeds there. If they choose not to feed there, they're still getting in your home. So you haven't solved a problem. All you've done is added to a problem.
So we're doing exclusion. We've got long-term opportunities to keep animals out, to be good neighbors to our wild neighbors and good parents and pet owners by not using these poisons. What's the barrier and who's still using these? How do we make changes around this?
Yeah, the barrier is social, right? So we have grown up knowing that rat poisons exist, and the pest control companies push rat poisons. They don't put out snap traps, right? So, if you are going to choose, y- I will fully acknowledge that integrated pest management and those exclusion practices, it's expensive, and you're paying a large sum of money up front versus maybe a monthly bill to have a pest control operator come and service those bait stations. So if you are choosing a lethal method, then the good old fashioned snap trap is it's a as far as lethal goes, it's pretty humane. It's a quick
Yeah.
death.
There's different ways to kill mice, Mark.
There are different ways. I've had to use those every so often, and then I take that mouse out and put them outside, and hopefully someone comes and gets a poison-free snack. Um, but when you call a pest control operator, they're not going to say, "Here, let's put out some snap traps." They're going to say, "Let's put out some bait boxes." So that's one barrier. The other barrier is in your commercial environments. Again, the same issue. They're going to be putting out the bait boxes instead of snap traps. They're going to uh, rarely are they going to push integrated pest management, and so many of your businesses are going to be the ones that are contributing to having these in our on our landscapes. So the biggest barrier would is education around them, and letting people know that you're not just poisoning the mouse. And the poisoning a mouse, I think, is a poison in any animal is a pretty rough way to go. But if people understood that poison is potentially affecting other domesticated animals, wildlife, and humans, then they may opt to go a different route. And when it comes to our anticoagulants, in 2015, the EPA banned them completely from commercial sale. So you can't go to Home Depot and buy an anticoagulant rodenticide. They have to be put out by a licensed pest control operator, unless there's always a loophole, isn't there? The loophole is you can still buy them on Amazon in bulk. You just can't
Ooh,
buy. Yeah, right.
okay, great. So you can just buy a ton of them on Amazon.
Yeah, yeah. You can't go to your neighborhood drug dealer and get uh, whatever portion of cocaine it is. But you could go to the cartel and get as much kilos as you want, right? And that's the same
I
thing
like,
here. It's
uh-huh,
just like
Amazon's a cartel in this scenario. Got it.
it is. Yeah, it is because it's like if it's illegal to buy a little, why is it legal to buy a lot?
Yeah, that makes no sense. So, in addition to education, how can we make changes to prohibit these things in different areas? Is this a federal thing? Am I supposed to look at rulemaking? How do I make a change? What are things I could investigate as an advocate?
Yeah, so uh, Cory Booker was trying to push some legislative changes at the federal level. That hasn't gone anywhere. Uh, when you're looking at your municipalities, most states have what's called preemption, meaning if it's allowed at a state level, preemption for any kind of pesticide, uh, including rodenticides, fungicides, all that stuff. So if it's allowed at the state level, then a municipality can't ban them. So that leaves this one option, which is our state level legislation. And so that's
Yay.
something that we're both working on, and we will see a bill in Colorado in the 2026 session on bromethylene and both generations of anticoagulants. And so uh, that then goes to the education piece to writing your legislators and sharing with them the dangers of these poisons, and then uh, if it's not being addressed already, then being consistent with that messaging and hoping someone will sponsor a bill to bring that forward. It's a tough road. Oftentimes, it's taken me uh, 3 years to get this rodenticide bill sponsored, but when it does, I mean, we're going to be, it makes lasting change, and it's a movement that has really grown just in the past year or so. California, uh, like with all things progressive, that was the first state that banned these poisons, and they had to run three bills to kind of and expand, uh, tighten some regulations and expand the poisons that they're covering. But since then, we've had a number of states either introduce some rodenticide reform or have actually passed rodenticide reform.
Awesome. Well, I found on Project Coyote's website there was an excellent fact sheet. So, for our listeners, where can they find you and find more information on this?
Yeah, so you can always go. We will put a link in the show notes to the Project Coyote rodenticide fact sheet. And then if you have specific questions about advocating for rodenticide reform, or uh, you know talking to your neighbors, or especially in Colorado, I'm always happy to talk with folks if they have a group that would like more education on it. I'm always happy to speak to them. But general questions too, you can reach me at msurls, SURLS, at projectcoyote.org.
Woohoo. Well, this has been fun. You get to interview me next week, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's nice to sit on the other side of the table virtually with you.
Likewise. Well, thank you, Mark, and I'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been an episode of the Wildlife Wire with me, Mark Searles, and my co-host, Samantha Miller. Thank you for listening.